Welcome to BBA Rural Management Program's course 103, which is on Rural Society and Polity. Unit 2 talks about the basic social structure of rural society. Through this unit, we will discuss various social categories of rural society, namely caste, class, tribe and gender. This lesson is on caste as a social institution. The aim of lesson 1, the present lesson, is to outline the basis of caste system, to clarify the relationship between Varna and caste, caste and jati, also to introduce the concepts of Jajmani system, the dominant caste, Sanskritization and mobility within the caste system, and lastly talk about positive discrimination and caste-based reservation. The caste system in India has been a very basic and fundamental feature of rural society. It was during the colonial period when caste started being theorized and British administrators wrote very detailed accounts of it. And after independence, anthropologists and sociologists continued to study caste, and they saw it as a very distinctive feature of Indian society. So, what is caste? Caste is a group identity that is not achieved but inherited. It is an identity that is ascribed to someone by birth. And the caste system divides the society into different hereditary groups which are distinguished from one another, but they are also connected to each other by certain elements. The elements that we associate with a caste group identity are occupation, marriage, food, hierarchy. In terms of occupation, every caste is associated with a particular occupation which its members follow, and this occupation is inherited, and the family's traditional knowledge and skills associated with that occupation are also passed on from one generation to the next. Marriage is usually done within the same caste, and this is the practice of endogamy. There are certain food taboos that are based on caste. Each caste may impose restrictions on its members with regard to diet, and there are norms that govern food habits. When it comes to hierarchy, there are barriers when in terms of the mixing of what is considered a superior caste and what is considered an inferior caste, and under the caste system, each caste has certain established customs and defined norms. Professor Andre Bete, a sociologist, explains that in Hindu society, caste divisions play a part in actual social interactions and also in the ideal scheme of values. Members of different castes are expected to behave differently and have different values and ideals. So, traditionally in Indian rural society, caste has played a key role in determining the social status, in the selection of occupation, in the division of labor, in the selection of life partners, and also in the control of various kinds of social behavior. So, before moving, I will give a small exercise for you to do. First, based on your thinking or maybe as per your experience, list down the features of a caste-based identity as you know it. Second, write a brief note on how you see it operating on the ground. The way in which knowledge of the caste system has evolved historically can be divided broadly into 3 periods. So, before 1900, the focus was on finding an explanation for the caste system. Why is there a division into castes? What is the reason for the caste system and what has led to it, and so on and so forth. The second period, which is between 1900 till the period of India's independence, that is 1900 to 1945, the attention was rather on providing detailed descriptions and accounts of caste system. After independence, that is post 1945, There were a lot of intensive field-based studies that were done of the caste system by sociologists and anthropologists, and for them what was important was the ground level interaction of the castes. Now, Varna and caste are two terms that are often used interchangeably, but it's important to note the distinction between the two and what is specifically implied by each of these terms. Coming to Varna, Varna refers to the classical fourfold division of Indian society into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. So, into these four social categories, and it's an overarching broad framework. Now, Brahmins, usually the priests and the scholars, they are seen at the top, and they are distinct for their knowledge of the Vedas. They are also the ones who perform rituals. Then come the Kshatriyas, who are the political rulers, the warriors, the ruling class, followed by the Vaishyas, who were the merchants, the traders, and they also engaged in agriculture, cattle rearing. The fourth came the Shudras, who were essentially the laborers, peasants, artisans and the servants. Now, within this fourfold classification, what was not included within its ambit was another group which was at the very bottom, and they were considered the Untouchables, who performed occupations that were regarded as unclean and polluting, like scavenging or skinning of dead animals. They were considered outcasts or out of caste. Now, each of these four categories or varnas comprise jatis or specific caste groups. So, what I effectively mean is that when we look at the operation of the Varna system on the ground, so each category, so for instance, Brahmins will constitute of different castes of Brahmins, likewise with Vaishyas. So, in that sense, caste equates with jati, caste equals jati. And there are several regional variations that we find of the Varna classification, and we see that castes or jatis fit into this overarching fourfold framework. So, on the one hand, we have the four Varnas, which is the historical frame, and on the other hand, we have the different castes which fit into each of these specific Varnas. And actually, anthropologists and sociologists have studied these different castes and how they operate and work on the ground. Let me give an example. So, if we take the category of Brahmins, there are several castes that fall within its ambit. Brahmins can be classified based on different parameters. So, based on geography, you have the Panchgaur Brahmins, who from the north of the Narmada, then those from the south of the Narmada, you have the Panch Dravid Brahmins, and each of these two can be further divided. So, for example, if we divide further, the Panchgaur can be divided into the Saraswat, the Methil, the Adigaur, Utkal, etc. And each of these categories can also be further divided. Brahmins can also be divided into jatis or castes based on the philosophy that they follow, like the Advaita Brahmins, who Advaita meaning Vedanta, or the Dvaita Brahmins, Dvaita meaning divine. Based on theology, we can have the Shaiva, followers of Shiva, or we have the Vaishnav, that is followers of Vishnu Brahmins. There are also other divisions, like those who follow Smritis, or we have region specific Brahmins like the Nambudris, we have the Palakkad Brahmins. Likewise for Vaishyas, there are several castes like the Bisa, the Vaishya Agarwal, or the Jain, Maheshwari, Oswal and others. There are different theories on caste, and each theory approaches caste differently, and these different theories can be divided into three different sets. So, the first set of theories are those which look at a specific basic principle or premise to define caste. It could be, for instance, occupation specialization, or it could be a religious principle of purity and pollution, or it could be looking at the power distribution and land ownership. Based on that, classifying castes. Second set of theories are those which define caste based on the source from where they get their knowledge. So you have the textual sources of knowledge. So theories which base themselves on the textual sources, and the second within this set could be interactional theories and theories which rely on intensive field based working of caste and the interaction between different castes. Now the third set of theories are those which look at caste as a type of phenomenon. So for instance, if they look at caste as a structural phenomenon, then they will see it as a system among hierarchically ranked hereditary groups, or they could look at caste as a cultural phenomenon, which is based where the worldview is based on certain values or a cultural system. A distinct feature of the traditional caste system in India has been the Jajmani system. What is this Jajmani system? It's a system of interdependence, of reciprocity, and a kind of cooperation between castes and families in the village. And it has been described as the economic system or the economic aspect of the caste system. What happens in the Jajmani system is that specific castes provide services to the land owning caste. So a higher caste, a higher land owning family is provided the services and products of other lower castes. So it could be the carpenter, the barber, the potter, the dhobi, etc. And for the services that are being rendered by the specific the lower castes, the serving castes are paid in return, either in cash or in kind. So they could be paid in kind with grains or fodder or clothes or animal products like milk, butter, etc. So there is a kind of barter that happens here. The word Jajman is used for the landowning caste or the patron, and the word Kamin is used for the serving group. The Jajmani relationship usually exists between families. So, and by this what is meant is that one family of a higher caste would be associated with a particular family of a specific lower caste, and it is not as if a specific family of lower caste serves everyone of the upper caste different upper caste landowning families in a particular village. And the relationship that we see in the Jajmani is something that is hereditary. So it continues from one generation to another generation. It's a long run, durable and stable relationship. And the Jajmani system has also been seen and observed to be a very distinct rural phenomenon. The concept of Jajmani was actually first used by W.H. Weiser in his study where he talked about it in the context of Karimpur village in Uttar Pradesh, and this was published in 1936. And different thinkers have discussed the purpose and objective of Jajmani system and have had varied thoughts on it. So Weiser himself maintained that the Jajmani system actually helped Indian village become a very self-sufficient community. Edmund Leach talks about how the Jajmani system actually regulates division of labor and brings about a kind of economic interdependence between castes. Oscar Lewis sees it as a system that provides a supply of stable labor. But on the other hand, we also have those who think of the Jajmani system as a system that maintains the prestige of the upper caste, or it also causes impediment of mobility within the castes. Another feature of the caste system has been the concept of the dominant caste, and M.N. Srinivas talks about this. So a caste can be said to be a dominant caste if it is numerically over other castes, and if it has economic and political power, and also it is not too low in the local caste hierarchy. And for a caste to be dominant in a village or in a local area or region, it should own a sizable amount of cultivable, arable land. It should have strength of numbers. It should also occupy a higher place in the caste hierarchy, like I said. So what are the functions of the dominant caste, and why does it occur? So dominant caste, it becomes like a reference model to lower caste groups who imitate its behavior, customs, ritual patterns. The dominant caste also has been seen to set norms of social life, and leaders of the locally dominant caste, they also arbitrate in village disputes. They can also award and decide rewards and punishment. They are also the main power holders in the village and the local area, and they have also been seen to establish contacts with the outside world, the government officials, elected representatives, political leaders, and in this sense they influence different political processes. They have also acted as agents of different programs for village development, and because of their dominant position in rural society, they also play a part in controlling the economy of the rural society in different ways and means. Now, is the caste structure really so rigid? Is there no mobility within the caste system and the caste hierarchy? So, typically the caste system has been seen as a closed system, and because a caste status is something due to heredity, it is believed that there is no say in changing one's social position. But there are some studies which have pointed out that only the two opposing ends of the system are fixed, that is the Brahmins at the top and the untouchables. But in the middle, there was room for determining a higher position, so suggesting that mobility was possible within the caste system. But it is important to note that this kind of mobility was not on an individual basis, but it was on a group basis. So M. N. Srinivas used the term Sanskritization to describe this kind of mobility, upward mobility within the caste system, and he explains it as a process when a caste group emulates or it imitates the practices of another group which is placed higher than its own, and it imitates their practices in order to achieve a higher or claim a higher social status. So, for example, castes in Uttar Pradesh made an effort to improve their social status ranking by following the reference group behavior of a higher caste in terms of initiation rituals and other practices. But Sanskritization was not such a simple and easy process, which is, it may appear that it is a mere imitation or emulation of rituals and lifestyle, but the group also had to negotiate their status at the local power structure. Pre-independence, this process or this phenomena of mobility or Sanskritization was not that often. It was rather rare, but it became more prominent in the post-independence time, because there was distribution of land, there was access to education, there were other benefits, and the castes that were earlier deprived of economic and political power, they began to emulate religious and social practices of higher castes as a way to really assert their social status and change their social status. As a social institution, caste is primarily a part of the Hindu universe, but even among other religions like few Muslims and Christians and also Sikhs, a kind of stratification or categorization, or rather a kind of consciousness like we see in the caste system has been observed. So, although not in such a closed and tight manner like it was among the Hindus, and the similarities here which resonated with the caste system were in the form of endogamy, in the form of gradation based on hierarchy, in the form of having membership by birth, associating specific social groups with certain occupations. With the coming of the British, there were changes that we saw in the economy, like there was the beginning of a capitalist economy, and there was a sense of class formation there was the rise of a working class and a professional middle class. So slowly with these changes, we see that the caste system was getting slowly eroded. Until then, it was deeply entrenched in Indian society. There were also various religious reforms like the Arya Samaj, which refuted the caste system. So all of this added to the change that rural India saw in terms of the caste system. Also during the initial days, British East India Company was seen to encourage caste privileges and customs, but later the British law courts began to disagree with the kind of discrimination, inequality that they saw against the lower castes. Going further, both before and after independence, there were many movements, there were many responses and also government actions that took place, and their aim or objective was to eliminate the inequalities and the injustices that had been caused due to the caste system and the caste hierarchy. So in the 1870s, an anti-caste Dalit movement began with Jyotirao Phule, and he started a movement for education and upliftment of Shudras, Dalits, women. This movement spread to many parts of India. He also worked to abolish the idea of untouchability, which meant getting rid of restrictions on entry into temples and finding a place for Dalits within Hinduism. The Census of India, which was an exercise that was started by the British in late 1800s. Now in the year 1935, the census, as part of the census, the British government came up with a list of 400 groups which were considered untouchables. They also came up with a list of tribal groups. These groups were included on the list, and they came to be termed as the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. And these groups were given special privileges in order to overcome the discrimination that they had suffered until then. During the national movement, Gandhiji began using the term Harijans, which means God's people, to refer to the untouchables, because he really wanted to encourage a positive attitude towards the lower castes. Another prominent movement was the Dalit movement under Br Ambedkar. He began in 1920s and 30s, and he campaigned for greater rights for Dalits. He encouraged them to convert to Buddhism, to escape the social stigma of untouchability that they had faced under the caste system. Now these various movements, attempts and actions and efforts, they actually laid the context for different preferential policies and positive discrimination that the Indian government and the Indian state took to support the groups because they had faced inequalities and injustice and discrimination. There are three main categories of people that have been identified as eligible for positive discrimination and for preferential policies, and there is reservation for them in the legislature, in government jobs, in public sector units, in state supervised educational institutions, etc. They have also been promised special programs like related to healthcare, legal assistance, loans, scholarships, etc. And very importantly, they are also protected by law against any form of discrimination like untouchability or forced labor. So the first group here is the scheduled caste, which includes communities that were historically considered untouchables. The second group is the scheduled tribes, the communities who did not accept the caste system and they preferred to be outside of the caste system. They prefer to reside in the forests, in the mountains, away from the main population. They are also called the Adivasi or indigenous groups, and we will be covering them in the following lesson. The third is the other backward classes, OBCs, which includes castes who are considered to be affected by backwardness based on social and economic disadvantages. That includes Shudra castes and also some other castes. The individual states were the ones which were to determine which castes would be identified as OBCs. So, if we see in the image in terms of reservation, so we see the scheduled caste, which was the bottommost in the hierarchy, that is the untouchables. The other backward classes could constitute from the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. So, and like I said, the individual states had to determine which caste would be identified as the other backward classes. The Indian caste system has played a significant role in shaping the occupations, the roles of Indian society, especially in rural India. In present contemporary times, we see that the relationship between caste and hereditary occupations has become less significant. We also see that norms and restrictions of social interaction among different castes have also become more relaxed. Wealth and power in village is also less associated with caste, as land ownership has become more diversified. Endogamy is still enforced among families, but we also see a little fluidity coming in there. We see that caste has become a means for competing access to resources, to power, for educational opportunities, for new occupations, and for improvement in life chances. As we conclude the lesson 1, I will leave you to think about ways in which the policy of positive discrimination adopted by the Indian state has benefited the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. Think about it. Thank you.